In this tutorial, we're going to go through the purchase order process in detail, which means we will show the 4 different types of purchase orders which can get created. And from an understanding perspective, we will go through the entire process of checking, approving, issuing the purchase order up until that point, and then we will deal with the receiving in a separate tutorial. So we have logged in with a profile, which would probably be something like your typical on-site user's profile. And when they log in, they will come to a screen that looks like this. Currently, this user, for the company that he has access to, has 2 open purchase orders, the summary details of which can be seen here. What we will do is we will go through the process from start to finish so that there's a clear understanding of how a purchase order is created and the various workflow steps that a purchase order will go through. All purchase orders will start from opening the supplier. Suppliers are linked to specific companies in Pastel. So let's pop open the supplier. All of these suppliers' basic details are drawn out of Pastel. Pastel is always the primary source of information, and there is no edit or delete functions that can be carried out with regards to supplier details. If something needs to be altered, please request to have it altered in Pastel, and then the Pastel system will in turn update this system. When it comes to the purchase orders, 4 different purchase orders can be generated: an asset purchase order, an intercompany purchase order where a company is purchasing an item or items on behalf of a different company, a standard purchase order, and a vehicle-based purchase order. Now, there's obviously a number of items on a purchase order which are the same between all 4 of those, but there are subtle differences between the 4, and we will run through each of those. So just to show you the general overview of the purchase order system, we will create a standard purchase order. As we can see, we have the company where this purchase order is being ordered from, the receiving store. We will select the category. Let's take, cost of sales, which is likely to be a more applicable one. Okay, more details. All item details to be captured here. Okay, we've got 100 of those at $12.50. Alright, and basically, so the user will capture all the lines of the purchase order in normal fashion. Now, each user will have an amount or a value that they are allowed to issue as a purchase order without going through an approval process. If this purchase order falls underneath their approval order, when they save and forward this purchase order, it will go through for checking. And after checking, it will return to them and they can issue the purchase order to the supplier. If the value of the purchase order exceeds the authorized level, this purchase order will need to go to management for approval. So in this instance, we will keep the value below 2,000 Rand, which is this user's authorization level. Once the users put in all the relevant information, they're going to save and forward and send it for checking. Alright, at this stage, you will now see that they have 3 purchase orders open, and this auto track one that has just been created has been raised, and the next step that it needs to go through is checking. So what we will do is we will log out quickly and log in just as admin, because we've set admin up to be able to check and authorize purchase orders. And we see that the purchase order is sitting awaiting checking. The checking administrator will basically look at the purchase order, will verify that all the information is correct. The GL account, the category, the details, the price, everything that they need. And they will then either return it to the applicant if it's been rejected, or they will accept and forward it. Now, in this instance, because this user has a value of that to which they can create purchase orders, this purchase order will be returned as approved back to the applicant. An automated email will be sent back to them, informing them that their purchase order has been approved. So if we go back to our purchase orders, or if we go back to our home screen, we will see now that this purchase order now has been approved, and it has a purchase order number which can then get utilized. If the purchase order is edited at this point, it will go through, it will be resent back for checking and authorization automatically. From a management perspective, if a purchase order requires approval, it will come through to a screen like this, and the relative manager will approve that purchase order to the relative applicant. So let's log out and log back in as the previous user. We see that they have 3 open purchase orders. And this purchase order now has a purchase order number, and it has been approved. So they now are able to open that purchase order, preview. There's the purchase order on the screen, convert it to a PDF or whatever the case is, and then send that purchase order to the respective supplier for it to be fulfilled. On doing that particular step, they need to inform the system that this purchase order has now been issued. So once they've done that, they save all the details. And what can be seen now is that there is now a purchase order awaiting to be received. And that is the order, because now it's been issued to the supplier, and the next step in this process will be the receiving process, and that we will cover in a separate tutorial. So the capturing of all the details on a purchase order is identical, and the approval process and checking process is identical for all purchase orders. Let's just open the 3 other types of purchase orders and show the slight differences between them. So we'll go to this particular supplier, and an asset based purchase order. Okay, one must select the company and the receiving store where that asset is going to be received and registered. The category will always be fixed assets. One will select the GL account, which is linked to that store and that category, and that will be the limited information that they will be able to access. Okay, let's go and open a intercompany purchase order. From an intercompany purchase order, the user now has the ability to select a different destination to the company that is placing the order. So the system will realize and will record the company that's placing the order and then the final destination company. And these will be selected using these criteria here. and the category and the destination GL based on this company and this store that we've recorded here. So that's the final destination GL account of this particular transaction. Alright, the system will then take care of the rest from that point. Okay, and the last type of purchase order is then a vehicle-based purchase order. When a purchase order is being created for a vehicle, one will select the vehicle from the predefined list from this company, and they will also select the store to which this expense is to be allocated, and the rest of the expenses and the purchase order is similar to the others. So those are the differences between the purchase orders. And so the user must understand what kind of purchase order they want to place before they start the process. Okay. The type of purchase order will govern at the end of the day how this information gets imported into Pastel and the relative GL accounts that everything will get allocated to. So that is in essence how the purchase order process, going through checking, approval, takes place. We will follow up with the receiving and final steps in the purchase order process in the next tutorial.